Tonight, before you let your eyes close, I want to ask you something quiet. Who is living inside your head right now? Not beside you, not in the room, inside you, in that private theater behind your eyes, where their face keeps appearing even when you never invited them in. Maybe it's someone who left. Maybe it's someone who's still here but somehow still far away. Maybe it's someone who never even knew how much space they took up in you. Carl Jung spent his whole life studying this exact experience, the way another person can move into our mind and simply refuse to leave, the way we can carry someone for years, the way a house carries the weight of a person who no longer lives there. And tonight, I want to help you understand what's happening when someone lives too much in your mind. Not so you can shame yourself for it, not so you can force them out through sheer will, but so you can finally understand the mechanism, and in understanding it, begin to loosen its grip. Because here's the truth Jung would want you to sit with tonight. When someone occupies too much of your inner world, it is rarely about how much you love them. It is about how much of yourself you have handed over to them without noticing. It is about an old wound that found a new face to wear. And once you see that clearly, something in you can finally begin to rest. Let's start where Jung would start, with the body. Think about what it actually feels like when someone lives too much in your mind. There's a tightness behind the sternum, a low hum of unease that never fully switches off. You're doing something ordinary, washing a dish, waiting at a red light, and suddenly there they are again, uninvited, taking the wheel of your attention. You didn't summon them, they simply arrived, the way weather arrives, the way a headache arrives, something that seems to come from outside you, even though it's happening entirely within you. Jung believed this feeling of being invaded by another person's presence was one of the most misunderstood experiences in the human psyche. We think it means something profound about the relationship. We think it means we are deeply, uniquely bonded to this person. But Jung would gently correct that assumption. He would say that what feels like being haunted by someone is very often a sign that a part of your own psyche has gone missing, and your mind, in its endless search for wholeness, has attached that missing part to them. This is the beginning of understanding projection, and I want to walk through it slowly tonight, because it changes everything once it's understood. Projection is not something exotic or rare. It happens in ordinary minds every single day, usually without anyone noticing it's happening at all. It occurs when a quality that actually belongs to you, a fear, a longing, a wound, a hidden strength, gets pushed outward and experienced as though it belongs to someone else. You don't feel your own fear of abandonment, you feel their coldness. You don't feel your own hunger to be seen, you feel their magnetism. You don't feel your own unfinished grief, you feel their absence as an ache that never lets you go. The other person becomes, without their consent and often without yours, a screen onto which your inner world is quietly playing. And once that screen is up, once the projection has been cast, the mind becomes obsessed with the screen. Not because the screen itself is so remarkable, but because your own film is showing on it, and you don't yet know it's your film. Think of it like this. Imagine a lighthouse standing on a rocky coast at night. Its beam sweeps out across the water, again and again, searching, searching. From the shore, it looks as though the lighthouse is reaching for the ships, as though it needs them, as though its whole purpose is aimed outward at whatever vessel happens to be passing. But the truth is simpler and stranger than that. The lighthouse isn't reaching for the ships at all. It's turning on its own axis. The light was always inside it. The ships just happened to be standing in the path of a light that was going to sweep past that point in the water, no matter what was there. When someone lives too much in your mind, it can feel exactly like that lighthouse beam locked onto a single ship, convinced that ship is the reason the light exists. But the light was always yours. It was always going to sweep the water, searching for something. That person simply happened to be standing in its path when it caught them, and now your whole night is spent illuminating them instead of turning gently, slowly, back toward your own source. This is hard to hear, I know. It might even feel a little unfair right now, lying here, thinking of someone who has occupied so much of your nights already. But there is enormous relief hiding inside this idea, because if the light was always yours, then you are not actually dependent on them for it to keep shining. You don't need them to return your calls for the beam to keep turning. You don't need them to explain themselves for the light to keep working. It was never actually about them staying still and letting you illuminate them forever. It was about you, learning to turn the light back toward your own shore, your own rocks, your own unlit places that have been waiting in the dark this whole time. Jung would tell you that the intensity of your preoccupation with someone is almost never proportional to how important they actually are in your outer life. It's proportional to how much unclaimed material inside you has attached itself to their image. This is why you can think obsessively about someone you barely know, a person from years ago, a stranger who said one careless thing, a parent who's been gone for a decade, and feel their presence more vividly than people who are standing right beside you today. The outer relationship is almost irrelevant to the size of the inner occupation. What matters is how much of your own unclaimed self has been quietly filed under their name. Rest here for a moment. You don't have to solve this tonight. Just let the idea sit with you the way a stone settles at the bottom of a still pond. Let your breath slow. Let your shoulders drop an inch further into whatever is holding you right now. You are safe. You are only listening. Nothing needs to be fixed in this exact moment. Just breathe and let the water in you go a little quieter. Now, let's talk about why this happens to some people far more than others. Because Jung understood this wasn't random. It has roots, and those roots usually reach back further than the person currently occupying your thoughts. If you grew up in a home where love felt conditional, where you had to read the room before you knew whether it was safe to speak, you likely became an expert at studying other people. Not because you were naturally obsessive, but because your survival once depended on knowing exactly what someone else was feeling before they said a word. A shift in tone at the dinner table, a slightly heavier silence after you walked in the door. These were not small details to you, they were data. They told you whether the evening would be calm or whether you needed to make yourself smaller, quieter, easier to overlook. Jung would say that this kind of childhood doesn't just teach you to notice other people closely. It teaches your nervous system that other people's inner states are more important to track than your own. And a nervous system trained that way doesn't simply relax once you become an adult and leave that house behind. It keeps doing what it was built to do. It keeps scanning. It keeps orienting outward. And when someone new enters your life who resembles, even faintly, the emotional unpredictability of that original environment, your whole system locks onto them the way a plant turns helplessly toward a window, because turning toward the light source was once how you survived. This is why the person who lives too much in your mind is so often someone who is, in some way, a little unpredictable, a little withholding, a little hard to fully read. It is rarely the person who is completely steady, completely clear, completely safe. Steadiness doesn't activate the old scanning system. Unpredictability does. Jung might have said that the psyche is drawn, again and again, toward whatever recreates its original unfinished business, because some deep part of us believes that if we can just finally solve this one, if we can just finally get this person to be consistent, to stay, to make sense, then the old wound will close at last. But it never closes that way. You cannot resolve a childhood pattern by perfecting your performance with an adult who happens to be standing in for it now. I want you to notice something as you lie here tonight. Notice whether the person currently living in your mind shares any emotional texture with someone from your early life. Not necessarily their face, not necessarily their words, but their emotional weather. Were they warm and then suddenly cold? Present and then suddenly gone? Did you have to earn their attention rather than simply receive it? You don't have to answer out loud. You don't have to answer at all tonight. Just let the question drift through you gently, like a leaf moving across still water, touching the surface without needing to sink. Jung believed that until this pattern becomes conscious, it will keep repeating, dressed in different clothing, wearing different names, but running the exact same script underneath. This is not a punishment. It's simply how the unconscious works. It repeats what it has not yet resolved, hoping each time that this will be the version where it finally gets what it needed the first time around. And it can feel, from the inside, exactly like fate. It can feel like this particular person is simply the one you were always going to think about this much, the one whose presence in your mind was somehow inevitable. But Jung would ask you to consider a harder, more freeing possibility, that the intensity is not proof of a cosmic connection. It's proof of an old story asking, once again, to finally be told all the way through. Let yourself rest again for a moment. There's no urgency in any of this. Understanding a pattern doesn't mean you have to dismantle it tonight, in one sitting, through sheer force of insight. Patterns that took years to form take time to loosen. All you're doing right now is turning a small light onto something that's been operating in the dark. That alone is enough for tonight. Just breathe. Just let your body soften another degree into the mattress beneath you. You don't have to hold on to any of this tightly. Just let it pass through, the way weather passes through a valley, without needing your permission and without needing your resistance either. There's an old story that Jung returned to often, not because he needed mythology to make his point, but because myths, he believed, were the dreams of an entire culture, condensed truths that a single case study could never quite hold. The story of Narcissus is usually told as a simple warning against vanity. A beautiful young man who fell in love with his own reflection in a pool of water and wasted away staring at it, unable to look away. But Jung read it differently, and I think his reading matters here tonight. He didn't see Narcissus as a man in love with himself. He saw Narcissus as a man who had never truly been seen by anyone else, and who mistook his own reflection for another person entirely, a stranger in the water, someone separate from him, someone he was falling for. Narcissus wasn't obsessed with himself. He was obsessed with what he believed was someone else, a beautiful stranger who never looked away, who never left, who was always exactly where Narcissus expected to find them. He didn't recognize that the face in the water was his own, and so he sat by that pool, unable to eat, unable to sleep, unable to move on, entirely consumed by a presence that felt external, but was, in fact, entirely internal. I think of this story every time someone describes what it feels like to have another person living too much in their mind. Because so often, what we are actually staring at is our own reflection, cast outward onto someone else's face. The intensity, the fixation, the inability to look away, it isn't really about them at all. It's about a part of ourselves we don't yet recognize as our own, shimmering back at us from a surface we mistake for another person entirely. Narcissus didn't need to conquer the pool or drain it or shatter the reflection. He needed someone, or something, to help him understand that what he was staring at had been himself the entire time. And once that recognition happens, the spell doesn't need to be broken by force. It simply loses its power, the way a shadow loses its shape once the light changes angle. This doesn't mean the person in your mind isn't real, isn't important, isn't someone you genuinely care about. It means that the sheer size of your fixation, the part that keeps you up at night, replaying, wondering, aching, that part is very often your own reflection, and no amount of staring at the water is going to make the water explain itself to you. Only turning around, only recognizing your own face and what you've been searching for, can finally quiet the pool. Let that settle for a moment. You don't need to untangle exactly which parts are projection and which parts are simply real affection right now. That kind of clarity comes slowly, over weeks, sometimes over years, and it comes more easily when you're rested than when you're straining for it at midnight. So just let yourself rest again. Feel the weight of your own body right now, right here. Not in some imagined future conversation, not in some replayed moment from the past, just here, in this bed, in this breath. That's enough for this moment. Just breathe. Just be here. Jung also spoke about something he called psychic energy, a kind of attention and vitality that each of us carries, finite in any given day, finite in any given season of life. And he believed that this energy has to go somewhere. It doesn't simply evaporate. If it isn't invested in your own becoming, in your own work, your own creativity, your own inner development, it will find somewhere else to go, and very often it pours itself into the mental construction of another person. Think of your attention like water in an irrigation system. If the channels leading toward your own field, your own crops, your own soil are left unused, blocked by neglect or old habit, the water doesn't just sit there waiting patiently. It finds the nearest open channel and rushes toward it, flooding someone else's land instead, leaving your own field dry and unattended, while theirs grows lush from water that was never meant to be theirs in the first place. This is what happens when someone lives too much in your mind. Your water, your attention, your care, your creative force has found an open channel leading toward them, and until you dig new channels leading back toward your own field, the water is going to keep running in that direction, because water always follows the path that's already open. Digging a new channel takes effort. It takes noticing where your attention keeps flowing, and gently, without punishing yourself, redirecting some of it back toward your own neglected ground. What have you stopped tending in yourself while you were so busy tending, in your mind, to them? What creative project went quiet? What friendship went unattended? What simple pleasure, reading, walking, cooking a meal slowly instead of rushing through it, got crowded out by the mental space they were occupying. You don't have to answer this fully tonight. Just notice that the question exists. Just notice that there is a field of your own, waiting, still fertile, still capable of growing something, even if it's gone unwatered for a while. Digging a new channel takes effort. It takes noticing where your attention keeps flowing and gently, without punishing yourself, redirecting some of it back toward your own neglected ground. What have you stopped tending in yourself while you were so busy tending in your mind to them? What creative project went quiet? What friendship went unattended? What simple pleasure, reading, walking, cooking a meal slowly instead of rushing through it, got crowded out by the mental space they were occupying? You don't have to answer this fully tonight. Just notice that the question exists. Just notice that there is a field of your own, waiting, still fertile, still capable of growing something, even if it's gone unwatered for a while. Rest again here. Let your mind loosen its grip on the need to solve anything right now. You are simply noticing. You are simply becoming aware. Awareness, Jung believed, was always the first and most important step, long before any action needed to be taken. Just breathe in slowly. Just let the breath out even more slowly than it came in. Let your jaw unclench. Let your hands, wherever they're resting right now, go soft and open instead of curled and ready. There's nothing to grip onto tonight. Just let it go, a little at a time, the way sand lets go of water when the tide finally pulls back out to sea. I want to talk now about a specific kind of thinking Jung distinguished carefully, because not all thinking about another person is the same, and understanding the difference matters. There is thinking that resolves something, that moves toward a decision, a boundary, an action, an understanding you didn't have before. And then there is thinking that simply loops, the same 3 or 4 scenes playing over and over, the same imagined conversation rehearsed 100 different ways, none of which ever actually happens, none of which ever actually changes anything. Jung would say that this second kind of thinking isn't really thinking at all. It's closer to a compulsion, a groove worn into the mind, the way water eventually wears a groove into stone, not because the water is thinking, but because it has nowhere else it knows how to go. If you notice tonight that your mind keeps returning to the same handful of moments involving this person, the same words, the same look, the same unanswered question, ask yourself gently whether this thinking is actually leading anywhere. Is it producing a decision? Is it producing peace? Or is it simply repeating, the way a song gets stuck in your head, not because you love the song, but because your mind found the groove and hasn't yet found a way out of it? Jung believed that naming this distinction out loud, even silently to yourself, is often enough to loosen its hold a little. Not to stop it instantly. Habits that deep don't dissolve on command, but naming it changes your relationship to it. Instead of being fully inside the loop, unable to see its edges, you become someone standing just outside it, watching it turn, aware that it is a groove and not a truth. This is what Jung called becoming conscious of a pattern, rather than simply being lived by it. And consciousness, even a small amount of it, changes the entire texture of the experience. The loop might keep turning tonight. It might turn again tomorrow. But each time you notice it turning, each time you say quietly to yourself, "Ah, there is the groove again," you are standing a little further outside of it than you were before. And standing outside something, even by an inch, is the beginning of no longer being entirely ruled by it. Let yourself rest here again. You don't need to catch every loop tonight. You don't need to become a perfect observer of your own mind in one evening. Just let this idea plant itself quietly, the way a seed gets pressed into soil and then simply left alone, trusted to do its slow work without anyone digging it up every hour to check on its progress. Just breathe. Just let your body settle another degree deeper into rest. There is nowhere else you need to be right now, except exactly here. This work, because Jung didn't believe the goal was to stop caring about people, to become so self-contained that no one else's presence could ever move you again. That isn't wholeness. That's just another kind of wall. What he believed instead was that once you've done enough of this quiet reclaiming, once your own inner house is mostly your own again, something shifts in how you relate to others, including the person who's been living too much in your mind. You become able to think of them without the old desperation attached. You become able to care about them without needing them to behave a certain way in order for you to feel okay. The thoughts don't disappear entirely. Jung wasn't promising a mind wiped clean, but the quality of the thoughts changes. They become lighter. They visit rather than move in permanently. They pass through a room instead of occupying it around the clock. This is, in some ways, the most freeing part of everything we've talked about tonight. You don't have to stop caring about this person to find peace. You don't have to convince yourself you never loved them, or that the relationship meant nothing, or that thinking about them was always some kind of mistake. You simply have to keep gently returning the center of your own inner house to yourself, over and over, as many times as it takes, until caring about them no longer requires you to disappear from your own life in order to do it. Let yourself rest deeply now. You've done a lot of quiet inner work tonight, even if it doesn't feel like work, even if it just felt like listening. Understanding these patterns, even partially, even for a moment, is enough for one evening. You don't need to finish anything tonight. You don't need to have this fully figured out before you sleep. Just let your body sink further into whatever is holding you right now. The mattress, the blanket, the quiet weight of the night itself. Just breathe, slowly, without effort. Just let your mind go quiet the way a room goes quiet once the last person has finally, gently, closed the door on their way out, leaving the space soft and empty and entirely your own again. If someone lives too much in your mind tonight, let that be okay for now. You don't have to force them out before you can rest. Just notice them, without judgment, the way you might notice a guest who stayed a little too long, and then let your attention drift, gently, back toward your own breath, your own body, your own quiet presence in this exact moment. That drifting back, again and again, is the whole practice. Not perfection, not permanent stillness, just the drifting back, over and over, until one day you notice that the room they were occupying has grown just a little bit smaller, and the room you're standing in has grown just a little bit larger, and it was always, in the end, your own house to reclaim. Sleep now, if you're ready. Let the thoughts that want to visit tonight visit briefly, and let them go just as easily. You are allowed to rest without having resolved everything about them first. You are allowed to simply exist tonight, whole, unfinished, tender, and entirely enough as you are. Jung believed the psyche does its deepest healing work while we sleep, quietly weaving together what the waking mind is too busy to notice. So trust that even now, some part of you is beginning to loosen its grip, a little at a time, without needing your permission, without needing your effort, simply because you finally understand a little more clearly what's actually been happening inside you. If this found you at the right moment tonight, let it settle rather than rushing to act on it. And if you'd like more of these quiet explorations into Jung's understanding of the mind, of relationships, of what it means to finally come home to yourself, there will be more waiting for you when you're ready. But for tonight, that's enough. Just rest, just breathe, just be here, in this room that has always, underneath everything, belonged to you.